or a fair income person who's
League for every final in September.
Casualty, casualty, casualty.
This is DCI Amy Silva.
Earlier today, crewman died on board Vigil.
How are you with confined spaces?
No problem. I think this was a murder.
That's absurd.
Everyone knows it's a cover-up.
If you're asking who's capable, anybody.
Express from the UK. Vigil. Coming soon.
Switch to Foxtel NBN broadband and get 2 months free with lightning fast speeds, unlimited data, no setup costs and no lock-in contract. Make the switch today. Offer ends August 31. Call 135 704.
The path that you're currently on leads to war.
But I'm just a soul whose intentions are good.
You did nothing!
Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
Wentworth. The final sentence begins Tuesday, August 24 on Fox Showcase or watch on demand.
One last thing about the West getting better at destroying itself than conquering its enemies. Twitter, social media giant, based in the US, supposedly the home of free speech, still has a ban on tweets from former elected President Donald Trump, but does not have any ban on the official Twitter account of the spokesman of the Taliban, or as he now calls himself, the spokesman of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. That's it for tonight. Alan Jones is next. Good night.
Live, this is Alan Jones.
Well done, Andrew. So true, isn't it? Unbelievable, the hypocrisy of it all. Anyway, good evening. Thank you at the beginning of a new week. Look, may I just open by making one point? I'm only on air tonight and tomorrow night of this week. On Wednesday, I go into hospital. As my staff here know, I've been walking around almost a cripple. Even the stick is worn out and there has been a lot of pain. The doctors tell me my right knee is hopeless and they say it has to be urgently repaired and reconstructed. So, as my team here know, I can barely get down the steps, let alone up them. So, from Wednesday, I'm out of action for about 2 weeks. I thought I should let you know so that there's no misunderstanding. I'm sorry that means that so many of you who write to me and seek a voice may feel that you're voiceless again, but it's not the case. We've got a very good and dedicated team here at Sky News, and my good friend Rita Panahi, so bright, wonderful lady, will be filling in for me, and she will do a wonderful, wonderful job. Now, more of this coronavirus fiasco in a moment, but to Afghanistan and what must constitute, I hope I can bring a different perspective to you here, the greatest failure of the Western democracies in recent memory. Australia, along with the West, spilt blood in Afghanistan to grow democracy. Along comes Biden, who said on July 8, quote, "The likelihood there is going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely," unquote. I reminded you back on the 19th of July that the American Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy said in early July, quote, "Afghan interpreters could see a violent end. We're going to see pictures of them lined up against the wall and machine gunned." I've raised over and over again with people like Catherine McGregor, Jason Skanes, and of course Dr. Kay Danes, whom I'll talk to in a moment, that Morrison and Dutton should have acted to immediately provide a safe haven for Australian Embassy security guards and others who work for the Australian Embassy in Afghanistan. I have mentioned many, many times that these people had been extensively security vetted, biometric testing and the lot, by the Afghan Ministry of the Interior, by the Australian Security and Intelligence Agencies. And I asked then, over and over again, what the hell was the Morrison government on about? I've mentioned on this program over and over again that these people have performed their duties to Australia faithfully. Dr. Kay Danes and I have argued that the Prime Minister should have been doing, as Bob Hawke did after Tiananmen Square, and say these Afghan people are part of our military family. Take them to Dubai, where we have an air base 18 miles out of Dubai, Al Minhad Air Base. It can cater for thousands of people. It has medical facilities and accommodation. You remember I spoke to one of the Afghanis who were employed by the Australian Embassy via a security company on July 7, Shafiq Rahimi. You might remember the reception was poor, but Kay and I have been kept in touch with Shafiq. This has been an appalling dereliction of duty by America and Australia. I wrote about this for News Limited many times, the most recent on June 9, a fair while ago, with the Australian government asleep at the wheel. I thought we were going to actually show you there the headlines, but however, someone else is asleep at the wheel. On the 7th of July, I said this: the Taliban and its al-Qaeda allies are making rapid advances in Kabul. There you are, 7th of July. 7th of July, I said they were making rapid advances in Kabul. I also said this on the 7th of July. The fate of hundreds of locally employed Afghans who worked with our diggers see their fate on the line. I've talked about this many times. Government is deaf. The government is deaf. I've made the point many times that the Australian government decided in May to close our Kabul embassy, which has made it very difficult for the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to handle the applications for those they believe are in danger. I said, here we go, I believe we have a responsibility to help these people who have perfectly legitimate claims to Australian help. I don't know how many times I've said it. Now we learn from an Afghan politician that those left behind in Tarin Kowt, who worked with Australian forces in their base, quote, will be killed by the Taliban when the city falls. Now Taliban fundamentalists have surrounded the Afghan capital, Kabul, storming the capital just as they have stormed the nation. Why? Well, Biden told the world that US troops would be withdrawn on the anniversary of September 11. What a dumb move. Tell terrorists you're leaving, and the terrorists, of course, move in. And the murderous regime has now taken over. I've spoken to Dr. Kay Danes many, many times on this very issue. She's eminently qualified. She's worked in the Middle East. She's worked in Afghanistan and Southeast Asia. She's addressed US congressional forums on democracy. She's now a human rights and social justice advocate. No one in Canberra was listening to her or to me, and she joins me again. Kay, thank you for your time. Before we go on, isn't this image we're just going to post here now one of the saddest images you can see? Desperate and abandoned people, no aid agencies. Look at them. Look at them. No aid agent, no UN, no government, nothing trying to get onto a Turkish plane. But Kay, now we're told at 4 o'clock this afternoon that a Morrison government source says that they're giving, quote, the deteriorating security situation in Kabul. That's what they called it. It's unclear, they say, when aircraft will be able to land. I mean, that was a Turkish plane. It had no problems. Kay, this is an awful dereliction of duty, isn't it?
Can you imagine what our ADF personnel are experiencing, Alan? They've been called yet again to go to the rescue of Afghan people in dire straits, knowing that they'll probably get there too late, and then carry that guilt of what happens next as it unfolds.
I mean, you and I have been talking about it. Is we've been talking about this for months and months and months. Dutton wouldn't come on the program, didn't want to talk about it. Morrison went missing, worrying about something else. You're in the same boat. How many times have you and I said, get onto someone in Canberra? Yes, no, they won't answer. Now the National Security Committee, we're told at 4 o'clock today, is planning for an airlift, quote, when the situation allows. Well, a Turkish plane got in, didn't it, Kay?
Well, I know for a fact that at this very moment now, Alan, the 196 embassy staff and their families are not on that list for evacuation. That is disgraceful. The Australian government should step down immediately and hand it over to someone that knows what they're doing.
Our planes are still in Kuwait, is that your understanding? And I mean, your latest information, I think, and we talked about half an hour before we came on air, that the Taliban head intelligence officer, are you listening, Scott Morrison, Peter Dutton, has arrived in Kabul, and this is information from Kabul. Kay will confirm, and is looking for our Australian embassy group. Is that correct, Kay?
It's in this phone, Alan. If the Australian government want to find out what's happening on the ground, tell them to call us. Because, you know, it's clear to me that they don't know what's going on. And we have some of the greatest strategic minds in our country, and we can't even do this simple task. Gap Legal, Glenn Kolomitz, Pat Ryan, Jason Scaines, Stuart McCarthy, we've all been working really hard with you and with Sky News to get this information to the government, and they just keep shutting the doors. And we've collated 10 years of employment history on these people in a matter of 2 weeks. What have they done in the last couple of months? Absolutely nothing by the look of it.
Absolutely not. And even now they can't give a commitment. I mean, then you've got, with Morrison, then you've got Biden, who was asked July 8 if the Taliban takeover was inevitable. He said it is not. He said, you've got the... I mean, this is a joke, isn't it? This is a bloke, I'll read you what he said. He said, you have the Afghan troops, 300,000 well-equipped, as well as any army in the world, and the Afghan Air Force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It's not inevitable. And Kay, we're in exactly the same boat. You and I have tried every which way and no response. By the way, I should say, Kay, you have worked in one of these provinces, in the Taliban. You've lived in one of those provinces. You've been in touch with the highest levels in Afghanistan, in the last 24 hours. I mean, Shafiq, I interviewed here.
I'm talking with them. Sorry, Alan, I'm talking with them hourly.
Yeah. Now, I interviewed Shafiq here.
Until the phone lines...
Yeah, dropped out.
Sorry, Alan.
Dropped out. Yeah, no, Kay, go at you. They want to hear from you, not me. Go on. But I'm just saying, we couldn't, he dropped out, and he said there were gunshots at the airport. This is only hours ago, and that he's been told, Shafiq, who spoke to us, this is Australia, he's now eligible, but they've sent pages and pages of forms for him to fill in. I mean, it is beyond belief. Look at it. Here they are. Now, there's four of those pages. I hope the graphics will wind them over. That's one. There's another. There's another. There's another. Look at them. Look at them. This is what they're given. See the heading? Locally engaged employees in Afghanistan. Read all that crap. Read all that crap and we might think of evacuating you. Is this the most shameful and disgraceful episode in Australian history? I mean, Shafiq said to the Australian government, and this is in his broken English, and gave this message to Kay and to me, if they like to save our lives, I'll just read you exactly his broken English, do it today, otherwise the Taliban will take us from our houses at night and nobody would save and can save us. And that's the way he's speaking about it. But I mean, Kay, come in here. It's not believable that this rubbish is being sent.
It's unbelievable. And what's worse now, Alan, we've just learnt that they're expecting, our government is expecting them to submit this in person. They won't accept electronic copies of their visa applications that have already been submitted to DFAT.
It's just unbelievable. Then you've got this Ben Power, the Assistant Secretary, Afghanistan and the regional branch. I mean, they can't be serious. And there's a letter there, I think I've got the graphic of it here. He says, you're eligible to apply for a visa, but paragraph 3, if you can read it, please note, this certification doesn't guarantee you or members of your family a visa to enter and live in Australia. Scott Morrison, Peter Dutton, this is absolutely shameful. In any other country, people will be calling for your resignation. Where, briefly, Kay, we'll talk tomorrow if we have to give me an update, but where from here? Where from here?
Well, they need to get the Defence Force over there. The military airport is still operational in Kabul. If they get our people over there, I can get all our staff to them in a matter of moments. They've got their grab bags, they are ready. They've got children that need to be considered in all this, and our government needs to get moving before there's absolute atrocities committed.
Good on you. Good on you, Kay. You and I will keep in touch. It's absolutely disgraceful. No walls in Canberra. Now they're trying to do something. Miles, hours, days, months, too late. Back after this break. Look, and there was Joe Biden at the middle of all of this, telling the world, which includes the Taliban, that all Americans would be gone by September 11, and the Taliban have struck. I might add that Obama, in excerpts from a new book, The Afghanistan Papers, A Secret History of the War, Barack Obama is being accused of lying when he announced in December 2014 that the United States war with Afghanistan 2014 had reached a conclusion. And the statement said that the day marked, quote, a milestone for our country. Here we are, 7 years on, facing what Greg Sheridan has called today the most comprehensive and colossal failure of Western power in decades. Well, I see the former President Donald Trump has today called for President Biden to resign in disgrace over his handling of the Afghanistan and other issues. He said, Donald Trump, quote, it's time for Joe Biden to resign in disgrace for what he's allowed to happen to Afghanistan, along with the tremendous surge in COVID, the border catastrophe, the destruction of energy independence, and our crippled economy. Now, I should point out, though, that Donald Trump's administration had negotiated the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan by May 1. But the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has said overnight that the situation would never have happened if Trump was still in office. And that's true. Trump would have warned the Taliban in simple language of the price they would pay for what they are now doing. Well, I'll have a look shortly at another disastrous press conference in New South Wales today as the nation struggles to find a leader who can speak with rationality about coronavirus. But before that, it's instructive to see how the world sees us. This was Tucker Carlson across America a fortnight ago when circumstances were nowhere near as draconian and punitive as they are today. I can't imagine many Australians watching this program disagreeing with Tucker Carlson.
So where does this lead? What does civil rights mean when they're not enforced across the board? When your rights are given to you based on who you vote for, they're not really civil rights, are they? They're privileges. And that's exactly what's happening. In fact, it's happening around the world. Rights that we took for granted, that we believe we were born with in the English-speaking world, have disappeared. Australia is a former prison colony. Increasingly, it's looking like it once was. The Australian military is now enforcing martial law. People are not allowed to leave their homes. That's because of a COVID outbreak this summer that led to a grand total, get your pencils, of 9 deaths. 9 people died of the virus, and they're shutting down Australia, and they're using the military to do it. Police helicopters are clearing people off the beach. Is there scientific justification for this? No, but they're doing it anyway. The Anglosphere committing suicide collectively. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, Great Britain. What do they have in common? They speak the same language, they have the same culture, and all of them are allowing COVID to defeat them. In Australia, people not allowed on the beach and not allowed to ask why either. We know that because Sky News Australia, which has the same owners as this channel, has just been banned on YouTube in Australia. Why is that? Well, Sky News Australia reported that outdoor mask mandates and universal lockdowns may not be necessary to defeat COVID or very effective in defeating COVID. They reported that the science is far from settled on those questions, and they're right. It is far from settled.
Tucker Carlson, well, as you all know by now, that was me being cancelled. I've said 2 things all along on this. Firstly, provide all the facts and the evidence. Remember, I've said that the real pandemic is the denial to Australians of many truths and other opinions. And the second thing, as you know, I've sought to do from day one is to dismantle the alarmism. But the alarmism continues. It is true that since June 16, there have been 56 deaths. But if you apply the truth test, it's one thing to say how old these people are, but how many of them had comorbidities? Did they die with coronavirus or from it? This helps to dismantle the alarmism, because in the year 2018, almost 15,000 people died in New South Wales from malignant neoplasms. These are malignant cancers. Over 3,600 died from mental disorders. Over 14,000 died from circulatory diseases. Over 4,900 from respiratory diseases. So do these figures justify, for example, relationship registration? Now, of course, those causes of death are not infectious, but do the figures justify, for example, relationship registration? Australians in hotspots have to register their single bubble companion with the New South Wales government. Much was made of the Premier's secret relationship with Daryl Maguire. I supported the Premier. It was no one's business. But she's now signed off on orders that would force Australians in New South Wales to disclose their relationships, or at least their friendships, if they want to see those people, even though she didn't register her secret relationship with Daryl Maguire when required by the Parliament because she was discussing matters of state with him. Then there's the disturbing politicisation of the police, a virtual asking of the police to write health orders. And the first was that the 10-kilometre radius for outdoor activity be reduced to 5. It's unworkable. And before I give an example of that, should Australians be aware of the British scientist, Professor Sir Andrew Pollard, who led the Oxford vaccine team? Last week he spoke to an all-party parliamentary group on coronavirus in Britain's House of Commons. He told them it was clear the Delta variant can still infect people who have been vaccinated, which is the point I've made often. While being vaccinated is very effective in avoiding severe illness, you may still be infected. Now remember, we're locked up because Berejiklian says 70% to 80% vaccination before the lockdown can end. Today she's talking about November, still in lockdown. Professor Sir Andrew Pollard has told the British Parliamentary Group on coronavirus in London, quote, "We don't have anything that will stop transmission." So I think we're in a situation where herd immunity is not a possibility, and I suspect the virus will throw up a new variant that's even better at infecting vaccinated individuals. Paul Hunter, a professor at the University of East Anglia and an expert in infectious diseases, also told the committee that the concept of herd immunity is unachievable because we know the infection will spread in unvaccinated populations, but the latest data is suggesting that 2 doses is only 50% protection against infection. It's well known, he said, that even a single dose of either vaccine provides substantial protection by more than 70% against hospitalisation. Professor Hunter said, and he's an expert in infectious diseases, addressing the British politicians, he said, "We need to move away from reporting infections to actually reporting the number of people who are ill. Otherwise, we're going to be frightening ourselves with very high numbers that don't translate into disease burden." Professor Pollard argued that Britain could be continually vaccinating the population for no real health benefit if mass testing continued. Now, England are playing India in Test cricket at Lords. I might add, thanks to a magnificent 180 not out by the captain Joe Root, England have India in a bit of a tight spot. But the place was full. Lords. On the same day yesterday, there were 26,750 cases in England and 61 deaths. Professor Pollard further said, if we continue to chase community testing and are worried about those results, we're going to end up in a situation where we are constantly boosting to try and deal with something that is not manageable. He further said, it needs to be moving to clinically driven testing, in which people are willing to get tested and treated and managed, rather than lots of community testing. If someone's unwell, he said, they should be tested. But for their contacts, if they're not unwell, then it makes sense for them to be in school and being educated, unquote. I'm asking this again. Aren't we entitled to ask whether Berejiklian and co and all these alarmist premiers and McGowan in Western Australia ripping up the Constitution and denying anyone the right to cross the border, and a silent Prime Minister, aren't we entitled to ask if we're getting the right advice? The economy's being ripped to shreds, suicide rates are climbing, people have no jobs and no income, yet decision makers continue on thousands and thousands of dollars a week. I'm saying Australians are entitled to be better informed and told the whole story. I've tried to get hold of Professor Pollard to see if we can talk to him, but with the whole of New South Wales in lockdown, people want answers. Well, let's go to Tanya Davies, the Liberal member for Mulgoa, the voice of the voiceless. Tanya, thank you for your time. Does anyone in the Berejiklian government understand that there are thousands of people right across New South Wales who don't have reliable service from the internet, and yet this thing was announced an insult to democracy on Twitter?
Well, Alan, I'm doing my best with thanks to the amazing response from the community in relation to my stance against forced vaccinations to get the message through to the government that you have to open your ears, you have to listen to a broad spread of experts, a broad spread of the community, as well as your MPs. Alan, we don't even have Parliament back. How is it that the federal government of Australia can meet, and yet the New South Wales government, it's possible that we're not even going to meet in September? I mean, this is the ludicrous nature of how our government is screwing down on people and isolating them and sending them in their homes. You cannot go out, you cannot earn an income, kids cannot go to school. It is absolute crisis because, frankly, I think they have not allowed themselves to listen to other alternatives. And there are other alternatives, as you have just spoken about in your introduction.
Definitely. Just a brief snapshot. You're in contact with people all day. They're writing to you, ringing you. How bad is all of this?
It is absolutely dire, Alan. I was in the Baird government when he announced the greyhound industry would be banned. I was in government when that happened. And yes, there was backlash. There were a couple of MPs who immediately started to stand up and speak out against it. Alan, I have been overwhelmed. Last night, 600 emails just last night, overnight, on this issue. People are desperate. People cannot pay their bills, cannot pay their mortgages or rent. They cannot put food on the table. I was even contacted by a barrister who works with asylum seekers in close to, well, I won't say the electorate, but close to Blacktown, saying their asylum seekers are feeding their children water. They have no food. This is an absolute crisis. And I tell you what, Alan, if our government does not get their backside into gear and start helping our community get us out of this quandary, out of this downward spiral, we are going to see self-harm escalate even further. Domestic and family violence is already through the roof. I'm hearing that from police officers. Suicides, sadly, that they are going to go up. Businesses destroyed. Unemployment through the roof. This is a crisis. And here we are trying to stop a respiratory virus from travelling around the community. Who can do that? Who can actually achieve that as a goal?
But you see, people don't understand. Miss Berejiklian is a very arrogant and stubborn woman. They won't listen to you, don't listen to me, they don't listen to the public, they don't consult. Where do we go from here, Tanya?
Well, I'm not giving up, and I'm continuing my posts on Facebook and Instagram, sharing these stories of people that are writing to me, and I'm sending these stories to certain ministers. And I tell you what, I now have got more followers on my Facebook in 1 week than the Deputy Premier, than the Treasurer and the Minister for Sport. This is an issue that is a clarion call for our government to wake up to itself and turn its attention to helping the community, getting them back to work, getting the kids back to school, helping older people get socially connected again and out of this isolation, and restore our community the way it was. Yes, we will always have COVID with us. It's acknowledged, like we have the flu with us. It will always be there. But to stop people from living life, to penalise people even because they live in a certain hotspot, saying you can't go to work unless you have a vaccination. Absolutely. That is just a step that is overreach, that is just ludicrous, and it has to stop.
Magnificent stuff. My one final comment I'm going to make, all you viewers out there have watched this woman. Now, you've heard me talk about Berejiklian, and I'm critical of her. A very, very arrogant, stubborn, know-all woman. She sacked this lady from her ministry. She sacked her. Why? You can tell why. She speaks her mind, she's articulate, and she's persuasive. Keep at it, Tanya. Wonderful. You're doing a magnificent public service. Great to talk to you. Tanya Davies. Back after the break.
Alan Jones, proudly brought to you by the Global Food Forum, committed to sustainable agriculture and global food security.
This program is brought to you by Meriton, Australia's apartment leader in quality and design for over 58 years.
In every corner of this great country, Australians are chasing their dreams to be the best at what they do. In Australia and on the world stage. Through persistence and commitment, teamwork and resilience. With pride in what they do. Even in the toughest of times during the pandemic, pathways were found. With a shared vision to represent Australia, to be the best they can be, and to contribute to our nation.
Our patron, Gina Reinhart, helps to give me the leadership and inspiration
to want to be the best,
to climb the biggest mountains of our lives,
setting myself up now and into the future.
Like these great Australians, we too continually strive to be the best at everything we do.
We have varied and exciting career opportunities across our mining and agricultural businesses. To join Australia's most successful private company group, head to futureaustralianjobs.com for more information. Roy Hill and Atlas, investing in Australia's future.
Manufacturing has never been more important to Australia than right now. That's why Visy has just invested almost $1 billion to acquire the largest glass bottle maker in Australasia, bringing our total green-collar workforce to 7,200. Visy, manufacturing Australian jobs.
Enter a universe of DC superheroes and supervillains in their ultimate stories. A brand new collection of special edition hardback graphic novels, plus exclusive bonus content. DC Heroes and Villains, issue 1, $7.99.
At Peters of Kensington, we've opened our doors to luxury shopping for more than 40 years. That's why at Peters, you'll find the biggest range of top brands, both here in store and online, all at great prices. So whether you want to complete your home or you're looking for the perfect gift, you can trust Peters to deliver. Reward yourself with an experience. Peters of Kensington, everything you could wish for.
Now, back live with Alan Jones.
I should say to you all, our Afghani friends that Kay and I speak to know that you're on side. And we send your messages to them. Dean from Brisbane, I wish you... Oh, that's a hospital safe. Forget about me. Thank you, Dean, for your thoughts, by the way. Lachlan from Bendigo. Biden has let down so many people. He continues to destroy not only the US, but many other countries as well. John from Melbourne. The Taliban takeover was obviously going to happen. Shame on our government for their inaction. Hannah from Adelaide. If Biden had any sense, he could have avoided this mess. Now many will suffer. Amanda from Geelong. It seems to be another too little too late scenario when it comes to Afghanistan. How can our government let people suffer like that? Well, you've got to ask Morrison and Dutton and co. Ben from Newcastle. We aren't doing enough to help the people of Afghanistan. There's no commitment and no compassion. Lauren from Townsville. The way the US and Australian governments have turned their backs on Afghanistan is shameful. We need to make things right. Nathan from Perth. We've let down our Afghan allies. We've let down the Afghan people in general. We need to wake up and have some compassion. There are texts like that everywhere, I have to tell you. Well, now look, another disastrous, negative, aggressive, almost bad-tempered press conference today where fear and alarmism seem to be the only card they can play. And a Premier who's completely lost control because she knows everything and won't listen to anyone except the Chief Health Officer. She's a Liberal Premier. The Liberal Party's own website talks about, quote, our beliefs. And it says, quote, we believe in the inalienable rights and freedoms of all people. We work towards a lean government that minimises interference in our daily lives and maximises individual and private sector initiative, unquote. Well, you may as well rip that up. But certainly, Gladys Berejiklian, don't say you're representing the Liberal Party and the inalienable rights and freedoms of all people, minimising interference in our daily lives. The same Gladys Berejiklian, on the 2nd of June, big noting herself, addressed the Federal Council of the Liberal Party, the 2nd of June. This, in part, is what she said.
We made sure we employed an extra 1,000 people to be frontline contacts with our citizens, including many from the airline industry who were unemployed at the time. And we made sure that we had the systems in place to be able to weather whatever came our way so that we would never go into lockdown again.
See, is that so, eh? We wouldn't ever go into lockdown again. Not we hope. This is the arrogance of this woman in everything she does. Hey, listen.
We would never go into lockdown again.
What's the difference between what we see in Kabul or Myanmar or Tunisia and Sydney? military presence, heavy-handedness by police. These are hallmarks of a government which has lost its way. Yesterday, police helicopters were flying over Sydney. Today, 500 additional Defence Force troops are on our streets, on top of the already 800 soldiers patrolling areas where people live who escaped this kind of regime in Central Europe. And at the weekend, Berejiklian called it a war. Tell that to the people in Afghanistan. They'd laugh at you. Is it too much to ask our politicians not to traffic in such exaggeration? On Saturday, every news bulletin headline, 466 cases, despite an 8-week lockdown. But out of 130,000 tests, that's only 0.3% positive. That's a war that justifies this over-the-top, heavy-handed presence forcing fine Australians out of their work. You mean to tell me that this crisis cabinet of Berejiklian, Perrottet, Hazard, Barilaro, Stuart Ayres and the Customer Service Minister Dominello have approved all of this? I thought some of these people are at least half in touch with the electorate. Can I inform the crisis cabinet of something? While you lot were deploying the police helicopter at the weekend, another was hovering over the gap. People cannot handle what this government is doing to them. You are pushing citizens to the brink. You're sending people broke. You're leaving people with no dignity. You know the rest. It's un-Australian. We know what coronavirus is. We know who's vulnerable. We know, if you're like me and Richo, you have underlying health conditions. We know there are vaccines available. We know where to go to get the jab if we want to. We know there will be, in all likelihood, as Professor Pollard told British parliamentarians, a new strain of the virus. We can't cocoon ourselves from the virus for years on end. We've got to live with it. Or, in our snowflake society, is it irresponsible to suggest that? I've just today received a message from a distinguished Australian surgeon, world-renowned, currently on an assignment to an overseas government. He texts me, and I quote exactly, "Alan, I heard you on Sky a few days ago read the appalling behaviour of the bureaucrats and elites. Total disregard for the terrible effects of the lockdowns on the ordinary person. Australia has so lost its way," he said, "have held on to the extraordinary idea of COVID zero with infantile language, completely ignoring the reality of a virus." He said they have no idea that we need to learn to live with it. Rapid vaccination, yes, but understand that vaccination will not cure the problem. It is a very important part of what needs to be done to minimise it in the community. Keep up the good work, unquote. Well, that's what I aim to do. Yet here we had this appalling press conference today. 157,000 tests. The cost is beyond imagination. 478 new cases. Again, 0.3% positive. Or put another way, 156,522 tested negative. And Berejiklian says the community transmission numbers are disturbingly high. What world are you living in? 156,522 out of 157,000 test negative, and that's disturbingly high? Listen to the Chief Health Officer chant.
Too many people are infectious in the community.
Oh, you are kidding. And again, listen.
Stay home and leave your home for the most minimum of time.
Stay home. If it's important to stay at home, why doesn't the Chief Health Officer or the Premier conduct press conferences over Zoom? If they did stay at home, our leaders would still be on $7,000 or $8,000 a week, whereas the citizens told to stay at home are on next to nothing. This lot is shameless. Chief Health Officer Chant said she was concerned about Dubbo and the Aboriginal community. Wasn't it Chant and Berejiklian who decided to take Pfizer vaccines away from the regions to inoculate Year 12 students? So one week you take vaccines from regional New South Wales, the next week you're concerned about regional New South Wales. Back to this business about being fully vaccinated, vax. This is what you get in return. Listen.
Even if you're immunised, fully immunised, you still have to follow all of the rules.
I mean, it's laughable, even if you're fully immunised. No prizes for being fully immunised. What a punitive world we live in. She then lists the deaths, most in their 70s and 80s, and most unvaccinated. Why are the vulnerable in our community still not vaccinated? That should have been the first and only priority months ago. Another failure? Remember all the headlines and the outrage about the Rose Bay man travelling to Byron Bay? But there are hardly any cases in northern New South Wales. Wasn't the anti-lockdown protest a few weeks ago meant to be a massive super spreader? Was that more fake news? Because we've heard nothing since. Listen to the Premier.
We want to see a reduction in the number of families suffering. We want to see a reduction in the number of deaths we have to announce. You shouldn't be leaving the house unless you absolutely have to.
I don't think these people know the meaning of the English language. OK, don't leave your house unless you have to. For 52 days, she and those around her and the media pack are allowed to congregate and leave the house. She ramps up the fear tactics. Listen to this.
It is a horrible disease with horrible consequences. We want to make sure the case numbers come down and not up.
For a leader, that is disgraceful language and appalling leadership. In the world today of 7.7 billion people, there have been 4.3 million deaths. That's 0.05% of the world population. She calls this horrible consequences. Oh, loves the fear. In Australia, there have been 966 deaths. That's 0.003% of the population. What is Berejiklian on about? A horrible disease with horrible consequences. The deaths in Australia, 0.003% of the population. She was asked whether it was acceptable for regional New South Wales to find out via Twitter on Saturday afternoon. She doesn't answer the question. Listen.
I think it's apparent that everybody knows the serious situation we're in.
That answer has nothing to do with the question. The answer, Gladys Berejiklian, is no. It was not appropriate. Announcing a so-called critical public health order via social media only proves how little you think of the democratic process. Most people in regional New South Wales, but you wouldn't know this, have dodgy internet access. What about this? Chant was asked whether the lockdown has worked. Here is the quick response.
The lockdown has absolutely worked.
Really? What are the criteria that justifies that statement? But directly after that, she said this, listen.
I think like all things, there's multiple factors that why we haven't achieved the success to date.
Well, has it worked or not? They've got no idea. And again, the Premier tries to pretend she understands, listen.
It's so hard. All of us know how hard it is to not see your loved ones.
Gladys, people have stopped listening to you and this daily dose of rubbish. We are not in this together. The political and bureaucratic class collect full salary while inflicting devastation on others. A decent person would feel some sense of shame. Over in WA, you've got this power-drunk Premier McGowan wanting a zero transmission strategy. She was asked about that and doesn't even understand and has no qualms about contradicting herself. Some would say telling lies. Listen to this.
We all accept there's never been a complete elimination strategy. There will be cases, there will be outbreaks. So the question is, how do we live with it? Can we pretend that there will always be zero cases of Delta in Australia? I don't think that is a realistic proposition. We also have to accept we're not going to wipe this out.
Gladys, at primary school you'd be given a detention for telling untruths. You said on the 22nd of July, listen,
we want to get close to zero in terms of the numbers of people infectious in the community.
Can you believe this? Here's the Premier saying today, there's never been a complete elimination strategy. At the beginning of all this, her benchmark was zero. She said it then, or near zero community transmission. Gladys, you've been talking it for weeks. Now you're panicked and you're changing your tune. Well, don't tell us untruths and expect to get away with it. At 11:45 this morning, the Premier lost it. Listen.
No, excuse me, can I finish?
I'm sorry, today we saw the certain proof that Gladys Berejiklian cannot be re-elected in any circumstances. In fact, she shouldn't be now the leader of the party. Listen to this.
Even if you get to 80% double doses, if the case numbers are very high, it does limit what you can do.
Is this leader serious or just drunk on power? Listen.
The extent of your freedom depends on the case numbers.
So that means that what we saw overnight in the UK at the Lord's Cricket Test, full house, won't happen here under Berejiklian. But they had 26,750 cases in Britain and 61 deaths, which perhaps takes us back to the New South Wales Liberal Party website under the heading Our Beliefs, which says, the Liberals are a political party, quote, which believes in the inalienable rights and freedoms of all people and minimises interference in our daily lives and maximises individual and private sector initiative, unquote. Gladys, resign from the Liberal Party today. You're not fit for purpose. She was asked at the end, what does close to zero mean? Listen.
Well, obviously, there's no exact science to what close to zero is.
Yes, Gladys, that's right. A bit like everything else you say, we desperately need a fresh pair of eyes on the situation, not a power-hungry, stubborn and completely out-of-touch politician. We can't go on asking people to live like this. What do you think? Email me, alan@skynews.com.au, the text line 0414 000 848. Well, let's go to a bit of common sense from a fair dinkum politician, Mark Latham, on this issue that I've talked about for months, vaccine passports. Let's bring in Mark. Mark, didn't the New South Wales Labor leader Chris Minns announce his support for mandatory COVID vaccine passports?
Yeah, he did, standing next to Craig Laundy, the ex-Turnbull MP and now pub baron, and it seems remarkable a Labor leader would wipe centuries of struggle in the trade union movement to establish the basic principle that bosses haven't got the right to force a medical procedure upon their staff. People have got to have informed consent for their vaccination, and employers don't own and run the healthcare choices and the bodies of their employees. So it seems remarkable we're getting this call.
Yeah. How can Laundy demand, because he talked about mandatory vaccines for workers and customers, how can he demand that? He doesn't even know the rules, does he?
Well, he certainly doesn't know the Commonwealth Privacy Act, which has restrictions on vaccine records being shown to strangers. And I'm not too sure customers of Laundy Hotels would be thrilled with the idea if you're a young family and you've got to take your children for a meal or in the beer garden, enjoy a night out. You'll be kicked out if your 3, 4, 5-year-old children are not vaccinated. Now, we're a long way from going to vaccinations for young children, but Laundy seems to think it's going to be mandatory. I don't think there'll be any young families going to Laundy Hotels. They're going to find somewhere else. That won't be very good for business. And certainly he doesn't understand the Work Health and Safety Act, where you've got to consult with the workers. You need a risk assessment, and you've got to do a whole series of processes before you can go down this pathway.
That's a good point. I was going to come to that. So there are these clear processes, aren't there, that companies need to follow to protect the safety of workers. So these people don't know what they're talking about.
Well, there's discrimination laws, there's privacy laws, there's work health and safety laws, and just last week, the Fair Work Ombudsman put out an advisory, because if you sack someone, they can take unfair dismissal action. And the point was made there, I think this has been totally misreported and overlooked in the media, Alan, that there needs to be a legal basis for mandatory workplace vaccinations. And unless there's an award, an enterprise agreement or an employment contract that's got a specific clause about COVID vaccination, not flu vaccinations, a specific clause about COVID vaccinations, you haven't got a legal basis to do it as an employer. So Craig Laundy spent some time in the federal parliament, but I tell you one thing, Alan, he knows very, very little about the law.
You are unbelievable, Mark Latham.
That's true.
Just a quick summary before you go of where you think we are in this mad, mad world.
Well, it's clear that the Sydney lockdown has failed. The Berejiklian government has lost legitimacy. People aren't listening. And if you're double vaccinated, why would you be locked in your home? So these lockdowns always have what economists call a diminishing rate of return. People obey the rules less over time. Why would you look at these failures and think, oh, I'm here locked in my house so I can comply with more policy failure by the Premier? But, Alan, the other great con job here is when Gladys Berejiklian talks about opening up at 70%, that's the adult population vaccinated. That's only 54% of the total population. So it's not actually herd immunity if you work on the assumption the virus can travel through children. The truth is the politicians are addicted to lockdowns. They like the power. Some of their polling says it's good. We'll be locked down at 70 and 80% vaccination. This is a con job on us, Alan. Listen to McGowan in WA. He said the same thing. And Berejiklian will go down this path as well. If you believe this Premier and think she's being fair dinkum with us, well, you're off with the Pixies, I'm sorry.
Good on you, Mark. Keep at it. We love talking to you. Well, I won't see you next week, by the way. I'm going into the abattoir, cleaned up, but I'll catch up with you anyway. Keep at good work that you continue to do.
Hopefully they'll look after you and Kevin Rudd's not holding the scalpel and all these other lunatics attacking you.
That's right. Back after the break.
This program is brought to you by Peters of Kensington. Everything you could wish for.
It's my husband and my 2 boys. Please help me find my family. Why would you want to help me?
Because I can. I find people, Mrs. Chambers. I've done this all my life.
Get me the chief of police. Get someone.
Please, there is no going back from this.
I'm the child. Get out of my way.
The new series of Baptiste, Tuesdays 8:30 on BBC First or watch anytime on demand.
Manufacturing has never been more important to Australia than right now. That's why Visy has just invested almost $1 billion to acquire the largest glass bottle maker in Australasia, bringing our total green-collar workforce to 7,200. Visy, manufacturing Australian jobs.
At Meriton, we've built Australian dreams for generations. That's why, with a 100% completion rate, we are Australia's most trusted developer. Our multi-award-winning designs transform city skylines, offering exquisite quality and luxury living. Meriton, built for a lifetime.
Enter a universe of DC superheroes and supervillains in their ultimate stories. A brand new collection of special edition hardback graphic novels, plus exclusive bonus content. DC Heroes and Villains, issue 1, $7.99.
When you run a business, you get ahead because of the support around you. Tyro has been an innovation leader for almost 20 years, so you get the best payments and business banking support we can give to keep you moving forwards. Tyro, better business banking.
At Peters of Kensington, we've opened our doors to luxury shopping for more than 40 years. That's why at Peters, you'll find the biggest range of top brands, both here in store and online, all at great prices. So whether you want to complete your home or you're looking for the perfect gift, you can trust Peters to deliver. Reward yourself with an experience. Peters of Kensington, everything you could wish for.
The Forge can be a noisy place, and nothing is sweeter than the sound of victory. Forged in Fire begins August 25th on A&E or watch on demand.
Now, back live with Alan Jones.
Yes, easy to sum up the text. Morrison and Biden incompetent. Gladys Berejiklian resign and Tanya Davies an absolute public hero. Well, our resident Queenslander joins us each Monday, Peter Gleeson. When he isn't swimming laps at the Southport pool, I was going to say he's hosting Front Page here on Sky News, but I think he's most probably having a punt from time to time. Gleeso, thank you for your time. Can you explain the logic in this? A truck driver who lives in northern New South Wales has had 1 dose of the Pfizer vaccine 2 weeks ago. He drives trucks around the Gold Coast and Brisbane region, so therefore has to cross the border in order to make a quid. He waits at the New South Wales-Queensland border this morning, only to be turned away and told he's not a critical worker. How can Australia operate like this, Peter?
We are being divided right now, Alan. And you know what he said to the copper? He said, look, I live in New South Wales, I work in Queensland, but I'm an expletive Australian. And the copper agreed with him. It's madness, Alan. The country is on the precipice of, something really dire here. The division among the states, the populist premiers making decisions with one eye on the ballot box and the other eye on, basically, trying to keep the country safe. That's the problem in this country right now. We've got a divided country, and I'll tell you what, it really does not augur well for coming days.
No, it does not. And we're in serious trouble if the Prime Minister isn't prepared to defend the Constitution. Section 92 says clearly, trade, commerce and intercourse amongst the states shall be absolutely free. Now, WA is denying the entry of the eastern states. Clive Palmer is serving notice of a constitutional challenge. Is the federal government going to back off this time?
Well, I'm not sure if they are or not, Alan, but why have a constitution unless you actually enact the constitution? You use the constitution.
Yes.
We were set up in 1902 or 1901, whenever it was, and we were set up that the country was to be divided was to be united on the basis that we are Australia. If we want to be separate states, and go down that path, I mean, Queensland will still lead the medal count or finish up 9th in the medal count in the Olympics. But that's why the country right now is being divided, Alan. We are being divided on... it's just a line.
No doubt.
It's just a line.
Yeah, no doubt. Gleeso, your column yesterday hit the nail on the head. Here you've got this ABC journalist, Milligan, due to shooting off a bunch of defamatory tweets, now costing the ABC, which is us, close to $130,000 in damages. When will the government reform this public broadcaster, $1.1 billion, and why are taxpayer-funded journalists allowed to be on Twitter? They're representing a public broadcaster. They've got a big note to themselves and walk around with hairs on their chest. Why don't they compete in the commercial media market and pay their own bills?
Well, the ABC needs massive reform. We need to get rid of the board. We need to get rid of the chairman. We need to get rid of the CEO. I mean, they basically... The senior journalists at the ABC run the joint. And what I said in the column yesterday, Alan, was that SBS have really come along. You know, they are a terrific public broadcaster now with about a third the budget of the ABC. And when you've got errant journalists out there who are tweeting willy-nilly and they're not being protected by the lawyers that are at the ABC who generally protect them when they're putting together stories, you have this result. And I think a lot of Australian taxpayers would think, well, why are we picking up the bill? Why are we picking up the bill for an errant tweet? So they need reform big time, Alan.
100%. Good on you, Gleeso. Always good to talk to you. Tip us a winner for the weekend and we'll talk to you later. There he is. We love him, don't we? And he's good. Peter Gleeson. Back to wrap it all up after the break.
When you run a business, you get ahead because of the support around you. Tyro has been an innovation leader for almost 20 years, so you get the best payments and business banking support we can give to keep you moving forwards. Tyro, better business banking.
Look out for the sunrise, enjoy local service, delivered with a friendly smile. Look out for the sunrise, enjoy local choices, the best within a country mile.
This guy's name is Sonny. If you see him at your local store, you know you'll enjoy great specials and genuine care from people who live local. So, do what the locals do.
Look out for the sunrise, enjoy local service, the best within a country mile.
With Nordic Track, the results you want start here.
Let's go on a journey through Antarctica, through Monument Valley,
through the Balkans,
in Thailand,
in Morocco.
The best treadmills, bikes, ellipticals, rowers, and state-of-the-art strength equipment take you further. Nordic Track connects you to a personal trainer in your home. Nordic Track, the home of interactive personal training.
Everyday work, exercise and strains leave your body in an aching mess. What if you could combine soothing pressure, vibrating massage and heat therapy? Introducing Calming Heat, the revolutionary massaging weighted heating pad. Calming Heat combines soothing weighted pressure with the warming relief of an extra large heating pad, plus massaging vibrations that can be turned on and off. The secret is therapeutic heat that's absorbed into the weighted clay beads, combined with massaging therapy, all stitched in a soft, luxurious fabric, delivering warm, soothing pressure therapy to muscles and joints. Watch when blasted with air, this regular heating pad blows away, but the weighted pressure and no-slip fabric keep Calming Heat securely in place. Calming Heat's weighted pressure, gentle massage and large heating pad will help soothe and comfort any part of your body. Plus, Calming Heat features one-touch control, a convenient 2.74 metre cord and automatic shut-off. So while regular heating pads are blown away, Calming Heat's weighted, soothing pressure therapy can last all night and day. Call Global Shop Direct or go online now and get the Calming Heat massaging weighted heating pad for the low price on your screen. You'll get the standard model with 3 heat settings and 3 massage settings. That's 9 relaxing combinations. But wait, if you want more massage options, then upgrade to the deluxe model. You'll get 9 massage settings and the 3 heat settings. Wow, that's 27 combinations. Want even more coverage? Then order the Deluxe XL. It's got all the features of the Deluxe, but it's bigger and heavier, giving you 66% more coverage. And Calming Heat comes with Global Shop Direct's 30-day money-back guarantee. With a standard deluxe or deluxe XL to choose from, you can order the calming heat massaging weighted heating pad that's right for you. Get yours today.
It's a dance competition like no other, with celebrity presenter Alicia Dixon, Matthew Morrison, Oti Mabuse and Cheryl. New The Greatest Dancer begins August 28 on Fox Arena or watch on demand.
Now, back live with Alan Jones.
Yeah, look, just before we go, this Afghanistan surrender will have enormous ramifications. We now face a more unsafe world with the militant Islamist Taliban more emboldened than ever, and there are concerns amongst many in the US security establishment that the world will once again see a rise of terrorist attacks. On July 8th this year, Biden was asked whether the withdrawal of troops would be similar to that of what we saw in Vietnam. He replied in his usual incoherent way, these exact words, none whatsoever. Zero. The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being airlifted off the roof of an embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. Can't even string a bloody sentence together. Biden is utterly unfit to be the President of the United States, and it blows my mind how world leaders like Scott Morrison and Boris Johnson suck up to such an intellectually bereft individual. The last word must go to the Wall Street Journal editorial board. President Biden's statement on Saturday, they say, washing his hands of Afghanistan deserves to go down as one of the most shameful in history by a commander-in-chief at such a moment of American retreat. It went on, as the Taliban closed in on Kabul, Mr. Biden sent a confirmation of US abandonment that absolved himself of responsibility, deflected blame to his predecessor, and more or less invited the Taliban to take over the country. This is the Wall Street Journal editorial board, not Alan Jones. It went on. Worst of all is the plight of the Afghans who assisted the US over 2 decades. Biden said on Saturday that the 5,000 US troops he's sending will help in evacuating Afghans and Americans. But it says there are thousands of translators, their families and other officials who are in peril from Taliban rule and didn't get out in time. It goes on. The Biden administration was far too slow to get them out of the country despite urgent warnings. The murder of these innocents will compound the stain on the Biden presidency. They ended by describing this as, quote, the worst US humiliation since the fall of Saigon in 1975. Now, I'm tired of saying this, but when you're sick of saying it, some are only starting to hear it. This is all due to the weak political leadership of the West, which brings me to the thought for the night. Leadership is about taking responsibility, not making excuses. That's it from me tonight. Remember, you can see all the program content on skynews.com.au and also on my Facebook page, Alan Jones Australia. Paul's up next, and I'll see you tomorrow night. Good night.
This is Paul Murray Live.
Thank you, King. All that with a dodgy knee. Can't wait to see you back fighting fit in a couple of weeks' time. Another edition of Alan Jones tomorrow night here on Sky News Live. Crackerjack tonight. You think you've heard it all? I guarantee you haven't, because tonight Pauline Hanson, Joel Fitzgibbon, Rowan Dean are all here in the first part of the show. Kate McGregor will talk about the failures of what's happened in Afghanistan and some more complicated issues, again, you have not heard thus far. Nicole Flint will talk to us, along with Senator Sarah Henderson, about matters to do with Channel 2. And it'll be 9 o'clock each and every night, where the curfew will kick in Melbourne. We'll talk about all of that and a lot more tonight. But to use a word that Daniel Andrews did today, it's a shitty day for Melbourne. It's a similarly stinky day in Greater Sydney, and yet another terrible day for Australia in lockdown right now. But I want to put everything to one side, and I want to get your attention for a few minutes. Because there are 4 things that we need to talk about when it comes to the COVID fight right now. Some of these things work with each other, some of these things work against each other, but this is what's happening right now. Here is the truth. Whether we want to hear it or not, this is the truth of where we sit tonight in this battle against COVID-19. Number 1, zero COVID is not an option. This is not a political line. This is not wishful thinking from the right wing or the extreme views of those who others seek to silence. This is how the rest of the world is handling it. Now, we are living at the moment in a fantasy land where premiers pretend that there is a world with no COVID in it. Chief amongst them, a man who I think is showing all the signs of just going